What happens when a Hollywood legend known for saying exactly what she means sits across from a host who's never afraid to push buttons? And neither of them backs down. Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. Whoopi leans back slightly in her chair, hands folded, the way she does when she's about to open a conversation that sounds casual but isn't. The audience is already buzzing because Jamie Lee Curtis has been smiling politely for the last few minutes, nodding along as the panel discusses aging in Hollywood, representation, and public accountability. The mood feels warm, friendly, almost celebratory. Whoopi tilts her head. "You've been very outspoken lately," she says, measured calm. "About expectations. About responsibility. About people using their voices." Jamie smiles. "I try to be honest. Sometimes that gets me in trouble." A few chuckles ripple through the crowd. Whoopi nods. "Well, that's what we do here." She gestures around the table. "We talk. We challenge. So let me ask you something that a lot of people watching at home are probably thinking." The room quiets. Sunny glances sideways. Joy leans forward. Sarah stops shuffling her notes. Whoopi continues. "You've said that staying silent is a choice, and that it's a privileged one. Some folks feel like that puts unfair pressure on people to speak when they may not be ready, or when it could cost them their careers. Do you think everyone owes the public their voice?" There's a soft "oh" from the audience. Jamie doesn't answer right away. She inhales, slow and deliberate, eyes flicking briefly to Whoopi, then to the audience. "No," she says finally. "I don't think everyone owes the public anything." The audience reacts, surprised murmurs, a few claps, a few confused sounds. Whoopi raises her eyebrows. "Okay," she says. "That's not what people expected to hear from you." Jamie nods. "I know. But here's the thing. What I said and what people keep quoting isn't that silence is immoral. It's that silence has consequences. And pretending it doesn't is dishonest." Joy jumps in quickly. "But Jamie, some people would say that's just semantics." Jamie turns to her. "It's not semantics when you're the one living with the outcome." Whoopi holds up a hand. "Let her finish. Let her finish." Jamie looks back at Whoopi. "I've had the luxury of a long career. I've had the luxury of security. I've had the luxury of messing up publicly and surviving it. That absolutely shapes how I see speaking out." Sunny leans forward. "But when you say silence is a choice, some people hear judgment." Jamie nods again. "And sometimes judgment is earned." The audience gasps, then applauds loudly. Whoopi laughs once, short and sharp. "See, now that's where it gets tricky." Jamie smiles, but it's tight now. It's always tricky when honesty enters the room. Whoopi turns her body slightly toward Jamie. "But who decides what honesty looks like? Because from where I sit, telling people they're responsible for outcomes they didn't directly cause can feel," she pauses, choosing her words, "heavy." Jamie's voice stays calm, but firmer. "I'm not talking about blame. I'm talking about impact." Joy interjects, "But impact without intent." Jamie cuts in, gently but unmistakably. "Still hurts." The audience reacts again, louder this time. Whoopi's smile fades just a touch. "So let me ask you this. If someone stays quiet to protect their family, their mental health, their livelihood, are they complicit?" The word lands hard. Jamie exhales through her nose. "Complicit is your word, not mine." Whoopi nods. "Fair. But that's how it's being heard." Jamie looks straight at Whoopi now. Then maybe the discomfort people feel hearing it is worth examining. The audience splits, applause mixed with murmurs. Sarah jumps in, trying to soften it. "I think what Jamie's saying is that we all have to make personal calculations." Jamie shakes her head slightly. "No, I'm saying we already do. And we just don't like admitting what they cost." Whoopi leans forward now. "But who gets to say what that cost should be?" Jamie's reply comes faster. "Reality does. There's a beat of silence. The kind that only happens on live TV." Whoopi lets out a low laugh, not amused, not angry, something in between. "You see, that's where I push back." Jamie tilts her head. "I figured." Whoopi continues, "Because reality isn't the same for everyone. And sometimes the loudest voices forget that." Jamie nods once. "And sometimes the quietest ones rely on others to do the talking for them." The audience audibly reacts, this time, a sharp collective inhale. Joy looks at Whoopi. "Okay, this just went somewhere." Whoopi gestures with her hand. "It did, because this is a real disagreement." Jamie keeps her posture open, but her jaw is set. "And I'm okay with that." Sunny asks, "Were you prepared for the backlash when you made those comments?" Jamie doesn't hesitate. Yes. Whoopi blinks. You were. Yes, Jamie says. Because if you say something that challenges comfort, backlash is part of the deal. Whoopi shakes her head slightly. That sounds easy to say when you're already standing on solid ground. Jamie's voice lowers. I didn't start there. The audience applauds again, longer this time. Whoopi pauses, then says, But you're there now. Jamie meets her gaze. And that means I don't get to pretend I'm not. A hush falls over the studio. Whoopi sits back, crossing her arms loosely. So you're saying with privilege comes obligation. Jamie nods. I'm saying with awareness comes responsibility. Whoopi looks at her for a long moment. That's a strong statement. Jamie responds quietly. So is silence. The audience erupts, applause, whistles, a few people standing. Whoopi raises her hand to calm the room, but she's smiling again now, though it's thoughtful. All right, we're going to take a breath here. She turns to the camera briefly. Because clearly, this conversation isn't over. Jamie lets out a small exhale, shoulders dropping just a bit, but her eyes stay focused. Whoopi looks back at her. And when we come back, I want to talk about what happens after the cameras turn off, because that's where things really get interesting. The audience claps as the tension lingers in the air, unresolved, alive, and unmistakably real. The applause fades, but the energy in the room doesn't settle. If anything, it tightens. Whoopi shifts in her chair as the cameras come back, the audience still murmuring like they're aware they're sitting inside something that could tip at any second. Whoopi exhales into the mic, all right. We're back. She glances at Jamie. And you see why I said we needed to pause, because this isn't a soundbite conversation. A few audience members clap softly. Jamie nods. I agree. Whoopi turns fully toward her now. You said something right before the break that stuck with me. You said awareness comes with responsibility. Jamie nods again. Yes. Whoopi lifts a finger slightly. But here's where I struggle. Responsibility to whom? The audience leans in. You can feel it. Jamie answers carefully. To yourself first. Then to the people affected by what you choose to do or not do. Whoopi's eyes narrow, not hostile, but probing. And if someone genuinely believes that speaking would do more harm than good, Jamie doesn't jump in this time. She thinks. Then they should live honestly with that choice. Joy interjects. But what does live honestly even mean in that context? Jamie turns to her. It means not pretending neutrality is harmless. The audience reacts, some applause, some murmurs of disagreement. Whoopi lifts her hand again. See, that's the part where people feel judged. Jamie looks back at Whoopi. Because it is a judgment, just not a moral sentence. Sunny leans forward. But Jamie, a lot of people watching hear that as, if you don't speak, you're part of the problem. Jamie meets Sunny's gaze. Sometimes you are. The audience audibly gasps. Whoopi lets out a sharp laugh. There it is. Jamie doesn't smile. I'm not saying that to be provocative. I'm saying it because pretending otherwise lets systems stay exactly as they are. Whoopi responds quickly. But systems don't change just because celebrities talk. Jamie's reply comes immediately. No, but they also don't change when people with platforms stay comfortable. Joy shakes her head. That sounds like putting a lot of weight on individuals. Jamie turns slightly toward Joy. It is, because systems are made of individuals. The audience claps louder now, but there's tension under it. Whoopi leans forward, elbows on the table. Let me flip this. What about the people who do speak and get it wrong? Jamie nods. That happens. Whoopi presses. And they get dragged. They lose jobs. They get labeled. Sometimes permanently. Jamie's voice softens. I know. Whoopi looks at her closely. Do you? Jamie doesn't hesitate. Yes. I've watched people I care about disappear from rooms they helped build. The audience quiets. Whoopi's tone shifts. So when you say responsibility, are you accounting for that cost? Jamie takes a breath. Yes. And I'm saying it exists whether you speak or not. Sunny frowns. But silence can be survival. Jamie nods. Sometimes. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. Sometimes. Jamie looks back at the audience, then at Whoopi. And sometimes it's convenience. The room reacts instantly, applause mixed with sharp murmurs. Whoopi lifts her hand. Hold on. Hold on. She turns to Jamie. You're making a lot of assumptions about people's motives. Jamie responds calmly. I'm acknowledging patterns. Joy cuts in. But patterns don't tell individual stories. Jamie turns to her. No, but individual stories don't erase patterns either. The audience lets out a collective mm. Whoopi leans back slightly. So where does empathy fit into your framework? Jamie smiles faintly. Everywhere. Whoopi looks unconvinced. Because what I'm hearing is a lot of certainty. Jamie's smile fades. I'm certain that avoiding discomfort doesn't make injustice disappear. The audience applauds again. Whoopi responds, but certainty can sound like righteousness. Jamie nods. And uncertainty can sound like avoidance. The audience reacts louder this time, a mix of cheers and nervous laughter. Sarah jumps in quickly. I think what's happening is we're talking about two different fears. Jamie turns to her. Go on. Sarah gestures between them. The fear of speaking and getting it wrong, and the fear of staying silent and being complicit. Jamie nods. Exactly. Whoopi adds, and I'm saying the first fear is real. Jamie replies, so is the second. Whoopi pauses, then says, but one costs reputations. The other costs what exactly? Jamie answers without raising her voice. Time. Lives. Momentum. The audience goes silent. Whoopi looks at her, expression serious now. That's a heavy thing to put on people. Jamie meets her gaze steadily. It's already there. Joy whispers, half to herself, wow. Sunny breaks the silence. Jamie, do you think people owe explanations when they choose silence? Jamie shakes her head. No. Whoopi looks surprised. You don't? No, Jamie repeats. But I think they owe themselves honesty about why. Whoopi nods slowly. That's different. Jamie agrees. It is. Whoopi exhales. I think where I'm pushing back is this idea that public pressure creates better outcomes. Jamie responds, public pressure creates movement. What people do with it determines outcomes. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. That sounds like passing the buck. Jamie shakes her head. It's sharing it. The audience laughs softly. Whoopi looks around the table. See, this is why I love conversations like this, even when they make people uncomfortable. Jamie smiles briefly. Especially then. Whoopi turns serious again. But let me ask you something personal. Jamie nods. Okay, Whoopi asks. Have you ever stayed silent when you knew speaking would have mattered? Jamie's jaw tightens slightly. Yes. The audience quiets again. Whoopi presses gently. And Jamie exhales. And I still think about it. A ripple moves through the crowd. Whoopi's voice softens. Regret. Jamie nods once. Yes. Whoopi pauses. Then maybe that's what people are reacting to, being told they might live with that. Jamie looks at her. I don't want people to live with it. I want them to recognize it. The audience applauds, slower now, more thoughtful. Whoopi leans back, arms uncrossing. You know, she says, this isn't the answer people expected from you today. Jamie gives a small smile. I've noticed. Whoopi chuckles. But it's honest. Jamie nods. That's all I can offer. Whoopi looks into the camera briefly. And clearly, this conversation is hitting nerves. She turns back to Jamie. When we come back, I want to talk about what happens when these conversations leave this table and enter the real world, because that's where things get messy. The audience applauds again louder as the tension lingers, no longer sharp, but deeper, heavier, and far from resolved. The applause coming back from the break is louder, more uneven. Some people are clapping with enthusiasm, others like they're still deciding how they feel. Whoopi waits for the noise to die down, one hand resting on the table, the other lightly tapping her notes. All right, she says, her tone steady but serious. Before we went to break, we were talking about what happens when conversations like this leave this table and enter the real world. Jamie nods, her posture composed, but there's a tightness in her shoulders now. Whoopi continues, because once this airs, it's not just you and me talking anymore. It's headlines. It's clips. It's people cutting 10 seconds out of an hour-long conversation and deciding who you are. The audience murmurs in agreement. Jamie responds, that's already happening. Whoopi raises her eyebrows. You think so? Jamie gives a small, knowing smile. I know so. Joy leans in. You're already trending. The audience reacts with surprised laughter. Whoopi shakes her head. See, that's the part that worries me. Jamie looks at her. Why? Whoopi answers honestly. Because nuance doesn't trend. Applause breaks out. Jamie nods. That's true. But silence doesn't protect nuance either. Sunny interjects. But once people hear you say, sometimes silence is convenience, they stop listening to the rest. Jamie turns to her. That's not an accident. It's easier to be offended than reflective. The audience lets out a low, oh. Whoopi raises a hand quickly. Okay, now. Jamie stops herself, then adds calmly, I'm not talking about everyone. I'm talking about patterns. Whoopi nods. Fair. But you also know that once it's out there, people project themselves onto it. Jamie agrees. They always do. Whoopi leans forward. So do you feel responsible for how your words are received? Jamie thinks. I feel responsible for how they're intended. Joy jumps in. But intention isn't impact. Jamie responds immediately. And impact isn't always fair. The audience reacts, half applause, half murmurs. Whoopi smiles slightly. Now that's something I agree with. Jamie looks at her. I figured. Whoopi continues. So when people hear you and feel accused, what do you say to them? Jamie answers. I say, sit with it longer than your initial reaction. The audience chuckles softly. Sunny asks, do you think people will? Jamie shrugs lightly. Some won't. Some will. Whoopi adds, and the ones who won't are often the loudest. Jamie nods. Yes. Joy tilts her head. But does that frustrate you? Jamie exhales. Of course. But frustration isn't a reason to stay quiet. Applause ripples through the crowd. Whoopi leans back. You keep coming back to that. Jamie meets her gaze. Because it matters. Whoopi pauses, then shifts direction. Let's talk about something specific. There are people watching right now who feel like every time a celebrity speaks, they're lecturing. Jamie nods slowly. I understand that. Whoopi asks, so how do you speak without preaching? Jamie answers, by admitting your own failures. The audience reacts positively. Whoopi nods. Okay, then let's do that. Jamie looks slightly surprised. Whoopi continues. You said earlier you regretted staying silent before. Tell us about that feeling, without naming names. Jamie takes a breath. It feels small at first. Like relief. Like you avoided something uncomfortable. The room is quiet. She continues. And then it grows. Because you realize someone else carried the weight you chose not to. A few audience members nod. Whoopi's voice is softer now. And that stays with you? Jamie nods. Yes. Longer than the backlash ever would have. The audience lets out a quiet reaction. Joy looks thoughtful. That's not something people hear often. Jamie responds, because regret doesn't make good TV. The audience laughs lightly. Whoopi smiles, then turns serious again. But fear does. Jamie agrees. Fear is loud. Sunny asks, do you think fear is what's driving most silence? Jamie shakes her head slightly. Fear and fatigue. Whoopi nods. That I understand. Jamie continues. People are tired of being wrong. Tired of being attacked. Tired of being misunderstood. The audience murmurs in agreement. Whoopi says, and tired people make cautious choices. Jamie replies, yes. But caution can become inertia. The audience applauds again. Whoopi lifts her hand. All right, let me challenge you one more time. Jamie nods. Please. Whoopi asks, is there a point where calling for voices actually drowns people out? Jamie considers. Yes. The audience is surprised. Whoopi smiles. I didn't expect that. Jamie continues. When we demand statements instead of listening, we lose the point. Sunny adds. So you're not saying everyone should speak all the time. Jamie shakes her head. No. I'm saying people should be conscious of why they don't. Whoopi nods slowly. That's more nuanced than what's being clipped. Jamie smiles faintly. That's usually the case. Joy looks toward the camera. Social media isn't built for nuance. Whoopi laughs. No, it's built for outrage. The audience laughs with her. Whoopi turns back to Jamie. So when the clips hit tonight, what do you expect? Jamie answers honestly. Some people will feel seen. Some will feel attacked. Some will stop listening halfway through. Whoopi adds. And some will just argue in the comments. Jamie chuckles softly. That too. Whoopi grows serious again. Does that discourage you? Jamie shakes her head. No, because conversations don't belong to me once they leave my mouth. The audience applauds, slower and more deliberate. Whoopi looks at her for a long moment. You know, I still don't agree with you on everything. Jamie smiles. I'd be disappointed if you did. The audience laughs. Whoopi nods. But I respect that you're not hiding behind platitudes. Jamie responds quietly. That means a lot. Whoopi turns to the camera. When we come back, we're going to talk about what actually happened after this conversation. Because trust me, it didn't end when the cameras cut. The audience applauds loudly as the tension shifts again. Not explosive now, but charged with anticipation. The applause after the final break is different. It's louder but scattered. Some people are standing. Others are clapping slowly, faces tight, thoughtful. Whoopi waits it out, eyes scanning the crowd like she's reading the room instead of the teleprompter. All right, she says finally, her voice calm but weighted. We said before the break that this conversation didn't end when the cameras stopped. And that's true, because it's already moving. Jamie nods, hands folded in front of her. She looks composed, but there's a seriousness now that wasn't there earlier. Whoopi continues. During the break, our producers were already showing us reactions. People posting. People arguing. People cheering. People very angry. A ripple of laughter moves through the audience. Jamie smiles faintly. That sounds about right. Joy leans in. It's intense. Sunny adds, and fast. Whoopi looks at Jamie. So let's talk about the aftermath in real time. Because the moment you said sometimes silence is convenience, that clip took off. Jamie exhales. I expected that. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. You expected that? Jamie nods. Yes. Because it's confrontational without context. The audience murmurs. Whoopi gestures toward the screen behind them, where blurred headlines and social posts are visible. Some people are calling it brave. Some are calling it judgmental. Some are saying you're out of touch. Jamie listens without interrupting. Whoopi continues. And some are saying, finally, someone said it. Applause breaks out. Jamie looks toward the audience. I'm glad some people feel seen. Whoopi turns back to her. But what about the people who feel attacked? Jamie answers honestly. I hope they stay long enough to hear the rest. Joy shakes her head slightly. You know most won't. Jamie smiles. I know. Whoopi leans forward. Does that frustrate you? Jamie thinks, then says, It humbles me. Whoopi looks surprised. How so? Jamie explains, because it reminds me how much power a few words can have, and how careful I have to be with them, even when I stand by them. The audience reacts with quiet applause. Sunny asks, Have you already heard from people privately? Jamie nods. Yes. Whoopi presses, supportive or angry? Jamie answers, both. And some confused. The audience chuckles. Whoopi says, That's usually the trifecta. Jamie laughs softly, then grows serious again. But I've also heard from people who said they felt relieved. Like someone finally named something they'd been struggling with. The room quiets. Whoopi nods. That matters. Jamie looks at her. It does. Whoopi pauses, then shifts. Let me share something from the other side of this table. Jamie looks attentive. Whoopi says, As hosts, we're trained to keep things moving, to challenge, to interrupt. But during the break, I was thinking about what you said about regret. Jamie's expression tightens slightly. Whoopi continues, and I realized how many times I've chosen my words carefully, not just to be kind, but to be safe. The audience murmurs. Whoopi adds, and I don't think that's wrong. But I also don't think it's neutral. Jamie nods slowly. Whoopi looks directly at her. So while I pushed you today, I also heard you. The audience applauds. Jamie's voice is quiet. Thank you. Joy smiles. That doesn't happen often on daytime TV. Laughter ripples through the studio. Whoopi smiles too, then grows serious again. But let's be clear. We didn't resolve this. Jamie shakes her head. No, Whoopi says, and I don't think we were supposed to. Sunny adds, because these conversations aren't about winning. Jamie nods. They're about staying in it. The audience applauds again. Whoopi gestures to the crowd. And judging by this room, people are definitely in it. She turns back to Jamie. Do you regret saying anything today? Jamie answers immediately. No. A few claps break out. Whoopi asks, would you phrase anything differently? Jamie thinks. I might slow down more. Whoopi chuckles. Good luck with that here. The audience laughs loudly. Jamie smiles. I know. Whoopi grows reflective again. When the show ends today, people will keep arguing. Clips will circulate. Words will be stripped of tone and context. Jamie nods. That's the risk. Whoopi asks, and you're okay with that? Jamie responds. I'm okay with the conversation continuing without me controlling it. The audience reacts positively. Whoopi leans back. That's hard. Jamie agrees. Yes. Whoopi looks into the camera now. And that's something we don't talk about enough, the loss of control once something goes public. She turns back to Jamie. You gave people something real to wrestle with today. Jamie responds, so did you. The audience applauds, louder and more unified. Whoopi smiles, then nods. I'll take that. Joy adds, Social media might be on fire tonight. Sunny laughs. It already is. Whoopi shakes her head. And that's the world we live in. She looks back at Jamie. Before we wrap, is there one thing you want people watching or posting to understand? Jamie takes a breath. That disagreement doesn't mean disrespect. And discomfort doesn't mean harm. The room is silent. She continues. Sometimes it just means you touched something real. The audience stands, applauding longer this time. Whoopi lets the applause run, then raises her hand gently. All right. She looks into the camera one last time. This is the kind of conversation that doesn't end when the show does. And we want to hear from you. She gestures subtly toward the audience and the lens. Share your opinion in the comments. Tell us where you agree, where you disagree, and why. Jamie nods in agreement. Whoopi finishes. And make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories, because these conversations matter, even when they're uncomfortable. The applause swells again as the camera pulls back, the panel exchanging quiet looks. No victory, no defeat, just the weight of a conversation that landed exactly where it was meant to.